Good morning everyone and welcome to a special episode because today we've got a guest. My guest is Jérémy Perron. Welcome Jérémy.
Thank you.
You're going to reveal some street photography secrets today, no pressure.
I'm just going to try to share with you what I do and how I do it. Doesn't mean that's the best way to go about it, but that's just how I do things.
And Jérémy has been helping me edit all the videos for the past 4 years, and he's a videographer and photographer also, and I love his photography, right? Whenever he's sharing stuff from Japan or from other places, I love honestly to look at it, and I'm like, oh, this is inspiring, this is giving me ideas also. And I thought you guys may actually get something out of it. So make sure you stay until the end of the video because you'll reveal, or I will ask you to reveal one of your creative exercises that you do often when you're a little bit funky about your shots. And I'll ask you a few other secrets of the trade as we go on. So
sure,
take a notebook and take some notes, and you're ready? Let's get started.
Let's explore.
All right, so first question, first tip, Jérémy, how do you approach your everyday street photography? Meaning, do you have a specific routine, a timer, camera, a theme that you go with? How do you approach it?
And the photography that I do, it's either I'm practicing or I'm actually working on a project. I've tried to separate it like in those two. And the practice, I just try to get it done at least once a day, like whenever it's possible. So sometimes I'm just gonna walk from like the place I'm staying at to like a coffee shop, and I will just use those 15-20 minutes to just like take some shots and get used to maybe my focus, to just pay attention to the light, the shadows, the framing, the composition, etc. And it's just a way for me to just practice photography and actually doing it, because if you don't force yourself to do it and you always wait like for the next big thing or the next travel opportunity or whatever, like you end up not shooting as much. So I just try to shoot as much as I can every day, like when I'm going from a place to another.
So what's your main camera, what's your digital, and what's your everyday?
So my main digital camera is an A7 IV, and I use also this Olympus Miju on a daily basis, and I'm using my phone as well, but I tend to gravitate towards the Miju like very often because I kind of like get it out of the way. Like I'm not overthinking about like the shot that I could take. I just take the shot and then I move on to the next one. Whereas like when I'm shooting digital, I tend to try to want to perfect the shot that I'm already taking. So I'm just using that a lot to just get off with that barrier and just move on to the next shot pretty much.
Let's walk around and see what captures your eye.
We've been shooting pretty much like all morning. That was really nice. This morning the lights were like hitting a bunch of different buildings. Because there is so many cable also, like you get a bunch of shadows against the walls. So it makes for like interesting frame, and there is so many cool character here, from monks to just like everyday regular people. Also they look more different to us because it's a different country. I'm probably sure that if they go to France, they will think the same way about us, like, you know, being different. So it's just a very nice combo here to mix up, you know, having an interesting light and just scenery, and there is just so much stuff happening all around the corner because like people are just living a lot more like in the street, interacting, like selling food, which is not the case generally in the West. So that makes for a lot of interesting situation to record.
What lens do you use most of the time? What's your go-to?
So I tend to use the 24-70 the majority of the time because for the type of stuff that I shoot, I want to go more and more towards documentary for videos. And because of that, I tend to just lean more towards like candid moment and just like not trying to recreate stuff, but get it like right away like it was and not being seen. So the 24-70 allow me the flexibility to do that, I feel, compared to using prime where I may need to ask the person to reenact something, and that's something I try to avoid. So because also of that, because I want to be discreet, I tend to go on longer focal lengths. So anything like above like 50mm.
We'll talk about that in a second, about being seen, not being seen, talking to people. I think it will be interesting, but let's continue the little walk, and I have one more question for you.
Okay.
Okay, Jérémy, next question. What makes a good photo for you?
A very broad question. I think it just depends on the style of picture, because like they will be very different. For example, if I were to say, oh, what is a nice studio portrait picture and what is like a nice landscape picture. But for street photography, for me, what makes something interesting is generally the shadows. Like just paying attention to just the composition and how the shadows create a composition within the composition, if that makes any sense. You will have like your framing with maybe some building or something, and then the shadow element just brings a new layer to that and kind of like help you to frame your subject again in a different way. So I really look for composition and shadow, and that's kind of making a good shot for me. So yeah, the other day I was just saying to Pierre, like, you know, I find it funny that everybody's talking about like the exposure triangle with the shutter, the aperture, and the ISO. To me, in a way, there is like another triangle, which is basically composition, subject, and light. Like, they are the three most important things to make like an interesting piece of visual element, like both for photography and videography. So that's the three things that I try to keep in my mind whenever I'm approaching something. Is the light good? Is there like an interesting subject that seems to be worth like documenting? And is the composition following any sort of rules, like the rule of third or the golden rule, symmetrical composition or leading lines, those kind of things. So I'm trying to just pay attention to those three elements: composition, light, and subject.
So Jeremy, why don't you take a seat here, because I have a question for you. I've seen some of your Japan street photos, and they were actually really cool and some very interesting. I remember one with a shadow under a bridge of a lady in a small village.
Oh yeah.
And it seemed like that village had very few people. So what are your tips for people who end up in small villages like that, or small places where it seems at first there isn't much happening?
I feel like it's probably a lot easier when you're in a place where there is not that many people, but it's not your hometown or a place that you know, because you're just coming with like a new eye. I'm struggling so much more to just shoot in my hometown, for example, or like in the town of my grandparents, because I know those towns and I don't see anything new there. Even I'm living in Bali, so many people are coming to Bali to shoot like amazing scene and whatnot. And to me, because I've been living there for almost 5 years now, like I've lost sometimes a bit of that magic in some places that I'm just used to every day. So I think the main advice will be just try to see things with like a fresh eye, like a beginner's mind in a way. Just kind of like if that was the first time you were coming to that place. It's super, super hard to do. I'm struggling to do it. I'm definitely not perfect with that, but I'm trying to focus, as I said earlier, on the elements first and not necessarily the attachment that I have for that place. So, okay, is the light interesting? Is there a subject? Is there a composition? Maybe you have the three at the same times. Maybe you only have one or two, but I'm trying to look for those things, and it doesn't really matter where you are. If that's like a big city, a small city, you will find at least one of those elements. At some point, if you go early in the morning, you're gonna get some warm, interesting light. There is probably a few interesting composition in the small city as well. And even if there is not that many subjects, that make it actually easier for you to focus on finding a subject, because there is just so few. So then you can just try to see, like, it's limiting your choices. The same way that you're entering a restaurant, sometimes it can be overwhelming because you have too many choices. It can be the case, for example, in Shibuya or here in Nepal. Sometimes with Pierre, we've been like a bit overwhelmed because like, what do I do? Where do I point? You know, there is just so much stuff like happening compared to when I was in Nuda in Japan. I didn't have like the choice. I was just like, okay, there is that person walking in the street. I'm just gonna try to capture that person and focus on making that as interesting as possible in terms of composition, for example, you know?
I'm getting three things from here, which is, first of all, beginner's mind, clearly super important. So I love that you mentioned that. And I heard someone mention, I think it was Jason, say, Google images of your hometown if you have no inspiration, if you're bored of it. So that's a really good one, the beginner's mind. Then you were saying also using the elements you mentioned previously, but in that hometown without being attached to the location, which is really good. It's the first time I hear it, not being attached to the location, but being attached more to the visual elements that you want to use. Great. And the last one that you mentioned was less is more in a way. Like less choices helps you concentrate. I appreciate that. That's a really good thought process. That's awesome. Let's continue. I have another question for you. Okay, Jeremy. So here we're in like literally a small side street.
Yeah.
Imagine you could take two photos here. Well, describe what would happen.
Okay. So right now there is one that will be obvious to me. It's just a guy sitting like right behind me. But the issue, as I mentioned, I'm more into like candid stuff, and right now we've been already pretty obvious. That's the kind of thing where I might have just walk bypass and maybe go around and try to just take the shot after it. Because I could have just asked, which is completely fine. I think there is nothing wrong with that. But in my opinion, you got a 50% chance of the person either refusing or changing their behavior. And I try to capture like the behavior as it is. So there is absolutely, I think it's great to just ask, and sometimes you get lucky because the person is actually like, you know, redoing it in the best way possible, or smiling, or you get like other expression or things. But I tend to gravitate towards just like capturing the moment as it is. And right now, I think that's gonna be quite tricky, but we're gonna see how that person reacts when I just like try to take a shot. So let's see.
For all of you watching, this is definitely difficult when you're filming a video and someone's asking you to take a photo and you're asking it to be candid.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate
really
it.
difficult. Do you take it?
Yeah, I asked him and he was just like, okay, no problem. So
good. That's awesome. First yes of the day.
No, I got a few, but like the two one were pretty harsh and we recorded earlier.
Jeremy, so what would be the second shot you would take here?
Actually, right now, I will just try to make something with the light hitting that building because that's one of the only things that is catching light. There is like an interesting frame that can be done with maybe the window and the door. The only thing is we don't have a subject. We cannot have a subject in every situation, but that doesn't mean that doesn't make for a good shot, in my opinion. I think that's just like documenting, daily life, a place. You not always need to have like a human or an animal or anything living in the frame. That's sometimes quite interesting to just portray like architecture or like a street as it is. So I will probably just try to frame something like this. First, maybe let's see horizontally how it looks. Yeah. I think it's more interesting horizontally because there is just so much stuff going on with like the thread and then like the window and stuff and the truck. So I will just try to do that. Actually, the dog is quite cool, so I'm gonna add the dog in the frame because it is well placed for the shot, even though he's in the shadow.
Is he? Oh, cool. I'm curious to see the result, guys.
I have no clue. Okay, let's do that.
Definitely gonna be an interesting one.
That's the issue that I was mentioning about. The problem with this though is you never know if you're gonna trigger the flash or not. Sometimes that makes for some awkward situation where you're just trying to take a picture of someone without them knowing.
Wait, did the flash?
The flash go off. Right?
Went off? Oh,
yeah,
damn.
Yeah. And it also gives you like a completely different result. In the picture, you can kind of tell that there is a flash. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. So that's a bit like of a Russian roulette. For people that should film, what I'm saying is probably just ludicrous and dumb because they're recording, the lux with like a separate machine to kind of know what the exposure, if they need flash or not. But for me, because I'm using just for fun, it's always a bit of a gamble. But yeah.
Okay. I have a tip for you. When you half press with your camera, you can meter expose for where you want. So let's say you half press to the white wall, right? And you keep it half pressed. Then when you bring it back down, it's gonna keep that exposure.
You think so?
100%.
Oh wow, okay.
My Konica does that. And there is a green button, no? When you half press.
Yeah, there's a green, yeah.
So this means your metering is done.
Yeah, but then you have no idea if you're doing a silhouette or not.
That's where the craft comes. Yeah. Okay, there's a bit of chance in there, but if you try again actually, and you, I don't know if you want to, but your dog is gone.
Okay, I'm exposing for the white wall right now, and then...
There we go, yeah, and then you go back down now.
No flash.
It's not evident. Like if you've never shot film, it is
see.
not
we'll
evident.
make the comparison, we'll see when it's developed anyway.
Okay, I have two questions for Jeremy. One of them involving taking photos of strangers, his philosophy around and ask him, so I'll ask you in a second. But first, if you could shoot with only one thing, would it be a film camera or digital camera?
No, it would be digital.
Digital?
Yeah, it's just like, the film is just fun for me because it's removed, as I said, just overthinking about like taking one specific shot. Although I'm pretty sure if that was my main thing, I will still probably just try to take the same shot over and over. It will just be a bit more expensive. But I just like the fact that digital, you can close the feedback loop a lot quicker. And the more like feedback loop you can finish, the more repetition you get in, the better you get. So that's kind of like part of just I feel the practice. I want to be able to capture interesting stuff, both for photo and video, just because I like creating what I deem to be beautiful. Just something that is fun to me and that's just bring me joy. For me, just the more feedback loop I can complete, meaning getting out, shooting, editing, finishing it, and then restarting that over and over, the better it is. And I feel like the process naturally is just slower with film, which is great and awesome. That's just like a different workflow compared to with like digital. I can close those feedback loop every day and technically get better every day.
So does that mean that for a beginner, you would actually suggest going for a digital camera over a film camera? Or is there a place where you beginner, you want to be good at street photography, maybe start with a film camera? And I'm asking because I think it's a question, especially because film cameras have been trendy lately for some reason. So is that something you would tap into, or would you actually wait and be like, no, just stay digital, don't get up on the hype yet? How do you think about it? We're just walking around here.
We're just walking
It's
around.
actually really cute.
I will have maybe two answers. If you just take the approach that I just mentioned by wanting to get better and get as many repetitions as possible, I would say just go for the simplest thing to do that, which is take picture with your phone and then edit them right away on your phone
with your
and
phone.
get it done, you know? And then the more repetition you get, like the better you get. That will be just, if I were a beginner and starting like from scratch again, that's probably what I would do. Again, to have like as many feedback loop complete. You can have multiple feedback loop complete within a day, which is nice. You know, maybe the morning you do a quick session when you went from home to work and you took a bunch of photos during your lunch break. You just take the time to edit those pictures and you already finish a feedback loop. You already had the time to assess, oh, maybe this morning I could have like take a bit more time to compose my image there. Maybe I wasn't paying attention to the light enough, or my focus wasn't right, whatever it might be. Like the fact that you've been able to maybe shoot and edit within the same day or within a few hours, you can quickly analyze what you've done, understand what could be done better next time, and then kind of list that down to remember it for the next shoot. Yeah, that will be my recommendation. Just start shooting with your phone, edit with your phone, and complete as many feedback loops as possible. But if maybe you've been doing that for a while and you're not happy with what you're getting with your phone, and it's just you're looking for enjoyment and you just want to have like a film camera, just go for it and get a film camera and go shoot. It doesn't really matter what you're using. What matters is that you go out there and having fun and shooting, you know? So that's why I'm using that. Sometimes I don't want to just focus on progression and pay attention to everything. I'm just using that for taking pictures that I like, that don't have anything special, like photo with friends, like selfies, because they are just have more character than with a phone. So just do you and do whatever makes you happy, I guess.
Okay, thanks for your answer, Jeremy. Now I would love to know what's your philosophy around taking photos of strangers. How does it work? Do you like to be seen? Are you uncomfortable asking? And last but not least, do you think people should be in photos if they haven't said yes or no?
I tend to try to get the people without them noticing, and then if I get noticed, I'm just gonna go and show them the picture or the video, or sometimes I'm gonna ask them. It really depends. The limitation with not asking is you're limited to a certain kind of shot. You're gonna have to be probably at least 3 meters from the person. It's gonna be hard to get something that is wider and closer to the person.
Do you feel uncomfortable asking people for photos? How do you feel?
I don't really feel comfortable just doing it, especially with the language barrier.
Is it because you don't like to talk to people? I'm not saying that in a bad way.
I tend to not like people, so I don't ask. No, but I think like I tend to not ask necessarily that much. First, because as I said, I don't want to get like a biased like reaction. I don't want people to change their behavior or change whatever they're doing. But also sometimes it's just getting trickier with the language barrier. Can I take a dog picture?
Go. Did you ask the dog first?
Thank you. Is it okay? Can I use it?
Did he say yes?
So you didn't see, but I made the dog sign a waiver that I can use the image, and he's okay, and he's agreeing with me using the image.
That's
so
beautiful.
We're good. But yeah, I don't know, for like, it's always an open question. I think at the end of the day, if you're walking in a public space, yeah, in a way you're public property. That's like a wide thing to say, but I think you're just exposing yourself to whatever. And the difference though is that I'm not using any of my images for commercial purposes. I'm just capturing stuff and then sharing it, but I'm not using that for like a campaign or whatever. So I think as long as it's not used in a commercial like purpose, I don't have any issue with that, and I don't feel like there is any problem with that. Everything is changing very quickly in terms of license, what cannot be done with like the media not being able to be shared by anyone.
That's true with TikTok and Instagram and all
like
that nowadays.
Anyone can just take a video of you like on their like long selfie stick, you know, in a temple, and you don't want to be recorded, and that just might end up like in a private feed of someone. Then you might have like a professional quote-unquote photographer or videographer that just take that to make a book. Like now the media like consumption has changed so much that it's a very tough question to say like if that's something that is okay or not, because yeah, it just changed a lot.
I agree. It's something that changes a lot and changes also between cultures also in people.
Yeah,
so
that's something I think that's the main thing you have, in my opinion, need to be aware of, is like it doesn't mean the same thing for every culture to be taken in picture. And for example, again, religious ceremony that you might not be able to shoot, that's the case in certain place in Bali or for certain ceremony. So you need to be aware of, you know, what you can and cannot shoot. Generally, even if you took a picture, someone's gonna let you know that you shouldn't do it. And worst case scenario, you just have a conversation, you learn about like the culture of the place. If you really need to delete it, you delete it. And it's very rare, I don't know about you, Pierre, that someone come to you very angry and asking you to delete picture. Very often people are just curious and asking you to see the picture. And even people that seems to be like not really happy about it at the beginning, when you share with them the picture, they're like, oh, actually that's pretty nice, I'm happy with it, you know? And worst case, they say no, we delete it, and that's it. You know?
Yeah, it has happened to me maybe once or twice max. It's not something that's super common, honestly, for people to completely ask you to delete photos and stuff, but you gotta respect, or if you wanna go in a fight with people, go ahead, but I'd rather choose peace of mind and peace than being so attached to that one photo. Unless I can show them that they're not in the photo, you know, which happens sometimes. They're completely not in the photo, and they just have to see it to believe it. What happened? What did you see?
So there was just like this shop that looks super cool with like vegetables and stuff, and the frame of the building is really nice, look very old. We're just gonna get out of the road so we don't get run over. And it was just that guy on the phone there. And I think the scene was quite interesting. The light seems to just to bounce from like the floor on his face and on the shop. Yeah, I think it's just quite an interesting frame. We'll see how that looks once that develops.
Okay, Jeremy, thanks a lot for your tips and sharing a little bit your philosophy. Now I have one last question for you. Do you have a creative exercise that you can leave people with? Maybe they're uninspired. What can they try to do this weekend?
Wow. One exercise I'm just going back to over and over is just like playing with shadows. I'm trying to pay attention to shadows and try to have basically the shadow framing my composition and framing my subject. That's something I'm trying to look to just over and over, and I'm coming back to that.
Awesome, thank you, Jeremy. Everyone, you can go check out his Instagram. I mean, we've already plugged it. There is also your other business, which is creation of titles packs for DaVinci.
We just create the asset for DaVinci Resolve. It's at videoeditorstudio.com, and you can find effect, template, and title for DaVinci there.
Cool, awesome. And Jeremy, thanks for being with me for 3 years. I so appreciate your photography also and what you do with videos. So everyone, go check out his work. It's awesome. And thank him for all those videos, because it was not easy. Even this one. Hey, Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, future Jeremy.
The other Jeremy.
Remember, guys, get out there, go shoot, try something different, try something new. If you like that format, let us know in the comments, and we'll see you in the next one.